Before we step back in time and immerse ourselves in the chilling stone corridors of the Tower of London, I want you to get comfortable. Really comfortable. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this. It's a gray, mist-laden morning on the banks of the River Thames. The city of London is just beginning to stir, but you are already wide awake, heart pounding, hands bound tightly behind your back. The shouts of the crowd echo off the water as you're marched forward, boots scraping against the damp, uneven stones of the wharf. The Tower of London looms ahead, its ancient walls rising out of the fog like the jaws of some great beast. You've heard the stories, everyone has. Some say the tower is haunted by the ghosts of the executed. Others whisper about the secret tunnels and the infamous torture chambers. But none of those tales ever seemed real. Not until now. Not until you found yourself at the mercy of its gates. You're not a noble, nor a knight, nor even a particularly important criminal. Just a commoner, swept up in the tides of suspicion and accusation that seemed to wash through the city with every change of monarch or minister. Maybe you spoke out of turn at the wrong tavern, or perhaps a neighbor with a grudge whispered your name to the wrong set of ears. It doesn't matter now. The tower doesn't care about innocence. The tower only cares that you're here. As you're dragged through Traitor's Gate, the world narrows to the sound of your own breathing and the cold, brackish smell of the river. The stone archway above you is slick with moss, and you can't help but notice the deep grooves worn into the steps by centuries of prisoners before you. Some of them walked out again, but most did not. The guards, yeoman warders, or beefeaters as they're called, are impassive, their red and black uniforms immaculate, their faces unreadable. They've seen thousands like you, and you're certain they'll see thousands more. Inside, the tower is both larger and smaller than you imagined. The walls are impossibly thick, the air damp and close. Every sound echoes, the clink of keys, the shuffle of feet, the distant caw of the ravens that haunt the grounds. You're marched past the White Tower, its Norman stonework looming above, and into a narrow corridor that smells of mildew and fear. You catch glimpses of other prisoners, some huddled in corners, others staring blankly at the walls. No one speaks. No one dares. Your cell is little more than a hole in the wall, barely wide enough to stretch out in. The floor is cold, the straw bedding damp and crawling with things you'd rather not think about. There's a bucket in the corner, and a tiny window set high in the wall lets in a sliver of gray light. You sit, shivering, and try not to think about what comes next. The hours drag by. You hear footsteps in the corridor, the occasional scream or sob, the low murmur of voices you can't quite make out. Sometimes a guard passes by, glancing in to make sure you're still alive. Sometimes it's the jailer, a hulking man with a perpetual scowl, who brings you a crust of stale bread and a cup of water that tastes faintly of iron. He doesn't speak, and you don't ask questions. You've heard the stories about what happens to prisoners who make trouble. As the day wears on, you begin to notice the little things. The way the wind whistles through the cracks in the stone, the rhythmic drip of water from somewhere above, the distant tolling of bells marking the hours. You try to keep track of time, but it's impossible. Day and night blur together in the gloom. Hunger gnaws at your belly, and the cold seeps into your bones. You think about the stories you've heard, about Anne Boleyn, who spent her last days pacing these very halls, about Guy Fawkes, broken on the rack, about the two young princes who vanished without a trace. You wonder if their ghosts are watching you now, if they're waiting to see what will become of you. Sometimes, you hear the ravens outside your window, their harsh cries echoing through the courtyard. Legend has it that if the ravens ever leave the tower, the kingdom will fall. You wonder if that would be such a bad thing. As night falls, The tower grows even colder, the darkness pressing in on all sides. You wrap yourself in the thin blanket provided, trying to ignore the sounds of rats scurrying in the shadows. Sleep comes fitfully, haunted by dreams of executioners and scaffoldings, of crowds jeering as you're led to the block. You wake with a start to the sound of keys jangling in the lock. The jailer enters, his face grim. "Up," he grunts. "You've got visitors." Your heart leaps. Could it be someone coming to plead your case? But as you're led down the corridor, you realize with a sinking feeling that mercy is in short supply here. You're brought to a small room, bare except for a table and 2 chairs. On the table sits a ledger, a quill, and a single flickering candle. Across from you sits a man in fine clothes, his eyes cold and calculating. He introduces himself as the royal interrogator, and you know, with a certainty that chills you to the marrow, that your fate is no longer in your own hands. He asks questions about your family, your friends, your loyalties. He promises leniency if you confess, but you've heard what leniency means in the tower. You answer as best you can, but every word feels like a trap. The interrogator makes notes in his ledger, occasionally glancing up to fix you with a gaze that seems to pierce straight through you. When the questioning is over, you're returned to your cell. The hours pass. You try to hold on to hope, but it slips through your fingers like water. You think about the life you left behind, the bustling markets, the laughter of friends, the warmth of home. It all feels impossibly distant now. In the darkness, you hear the sound of footsteps approaching. The key turns in the lock, and the jailer enters once more. "Time's up," he says. "The king has decided." You're given a final meal, better than usual, but still meager. The jailer looks at you with something like pity, or perhaps relief. You're led outside, blinking in the sudden brightness. The crowd has gathered, eager for a spectacle. You walk to the scaffold, heart pounding. The executioner stands ready, his axe gleaming in the morning sun. You kneel at the block, and as the blade falls, you wonder if your story will be remembered, or if you'll become just another ghost haunting the tower's ancient stones. But the tower remembers. The tower always remembers. You awaken to the sound of iron-shod boots echoing down the corridor, a rhythm as steady as a drumbeat and as ominous as a funeral march. The thin gray light filtering through the high window barely illuminates the rough stone walls of your cell. Your body aches from the cold, your limbs stiff from a night spent curled on a straw pallet that offers little comfort. You're not sure how long you've been here. Days, perhaps weeks. Time, in the tower, is a slippery thing, measured only by the changing of the guard and the arrival of your meager meals. The morning brings no relief. The air is thick with dampness, carrying the scent of mildew, sweat, and something metallic that you try not to name. You hear a distant bell toll, its mournful chime marking the start of another day within these ancient walls. Somewhere, a raven caws, its cry echoing through the stone corridors, a reminder that life, however grim, persists even here. Today, you're to be moved. The jailer arrives, his face set in a permanent scowl, his keys jangling at his belt. He gestures for you to stand, his eyes flicking over you with the practiced indifference of someone who has seen too many prisoners come and go. You stumble to your feet, your legs protesting, and follow him out into the corridor. The tower is a labyrinth, its passages twisting and turning, each one lined with doors that hide secrets and sorrows. As you walk, you catch glimpses of other prisoners, some huddled in corners, others pacing restlessly, their faces gaunt and haunted. The guards are everywhere, their halberds gleaming, their eyes watchful. You keep your head down, hoping to avoid their notice. You are led through a series of gates, each one heavier and more imposing than the last. The final gate opens onto a courtyard, its flagstones slick with morning dew. The sky above is a dull, unbroken gray, the sun little more than a pale smudge behind the clouds. You shiver, pulling your threadbare cloak tighter around your shoulders. The courtyard is a place of contradictions. On one side stands the White Tower, its walls rising stark and unyielding, a symbol of royal power and authority. On the other, a small chapel, its stained glass windows glinting in the weak light. Between them, a scaffold stands, its wooden planks stained dark with old blood. You avert your eyes, unwilling to linger on the memories it holds. You are marched across the courtyard, the eyes of the guards following your every move. The jailer leads you to a low doorway, its lintel worn smooth by centuries of use. Inside, the air is warmer, tinged with the scent of burning tallow and old parchment. You are brought before a clerk, who records your name and the charges against you in a heavy ledger. His quill scratches across the page, the sound oddly soothing in its familiarity. Once the formalities are complete, you are taken to your new cell. This one is larger, but no less bleak. The walls are covered in graffiti, names, dates, prayers scratched into the stone by those who came before you. Some are written in trembling hands, others carved with desperate strength. You run your fingers over the marks, wondering what became of their authors. The jailer leaves you with a warning. "Keep your head down," he mutters. "Don't make trouble." His words hang in the air long after he's gone, a reminder of the precariousness of your situation. You settle onto the pallet, your thoughts churning. The tower is a place of waiting, waiting for judgment, for mercy, for the end. You try to recall the world outside, the bustle of the market, the laughter of children, the warmth of a hearth. But those memories feel distant, as if they belong to someone else. Time passes slowly. You are given food, bread, cheese, a cup of thin ale. It is better than nothing, though not by much. You eat in silence, listening to the sounds of the tower, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of voices, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer. As the day wears on, you begin to notice the rhythms of life within the tower. The guards change shifts with military precision, their boots striking the flagstones in unison. The prisoners are let out one by one to stretch their legs in the courtyard, always under the watchful eyes of the yeoman warders. Some pray in the chapel, their voices rising in a chorus of hope and despair. You watch, you listen, you learn. The tower is a world unto itself, governed by its own rules and customs. There are alliances and rivalries, bargains struck in whispers and sealed with handshakes. You keep to yourself, wary of drawing attention. At night, the tower takes on a different character. The corridors are silent. The only sounds the creak of timber and the scurry of rats. The darkness is absolute, broken only by the faint glow of lanterns carried by the guards. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, your mind racing with fears and regrets. You think of your family, your friends, the life you left behind. You wonder if they know where you are, if they are searching for you, if they have already given up hope. The uncertainty is a weight, pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. Sometimes you dream. In your dreams, you are free, running through fields of green, laughing with those you love. But when you wake, the reality of the tower crashes over you, cold and unyielding. Days blend into nights, and nights into days. You lose track of time, marking the passage with scratches on the wall. Each mark is a testament to your endurance, a refusal to be forgotten. One morning, you are awakened by the sound of voices outside your cell. The door creaks open, and the jailer enters, flanked by 2 guards. "You're wanted," he says, his tone unreadable. You are led through the corridors once more, your heart pounding in your chest. This time, you are brought to a chamber you have not seen before. The walls are lined with tapestries, the floor covered in thick rugs. A fire burns in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the faces of those gathered. At the head of the table sits a man in rich robes, his eyes sharp and calculating. He introduces himself as the constable of the tower, the king's representative. He asks you questions about your life, your loyalties, your alleged crimes. His voice is calm, almost gentle, but you sense the danger beneath the surface. You answer as best you can, choosing your words with care. The constable listens, occasionally making notes on a sheet of parchment. When he is finished, he dismisses you with a wave of his hand. You are returned to your cell, your mind reeling. The interview has left you shaken, unsure of what will come next. You try to piece together what you have learned, searching for clues in the constable's words and gestures. The days that follow are a blur of routine and anxiety. You eat, you sleep, you wait. The tower is patient, its walls unchanging, its secrets well kept. One evening, as you sit by the window, you hear the sound of music drifting up from the courtyard. Someone is playing a lute, the notes sweet and melancholy. For a moment, you allow yourself to hope, to believe that there is still beauty in the world, even in a place as grim as this. But hope is a dangerous thing in the tower. You push it aside, focusing instead on survival. You have made it this far. You will endure, as others have before you. The tower watches, silent and impassive. Its stones have seen countless stories unfold, of betrayal and loyalty, of courage and cowardice, of life and death. You are just one more chapter in its long and bloody history. And so you wait, listening to the heartbeat of the tower, wondering what the next day will bring. The first hours inside the Tower of London are a study in sensory overload. You might have imagined, from stories told in smoky taverns or whispered in the dark, that the tower would be a place of silence and shadows, a crypt for the living, where only the condemned and the cruel dare to tread. But the truth is far stranger and far more alive. You are led down a corridor so narrow that your shoulders brush the cold, damp stone on either side. The air is thick with the mingled scents of old straw, sweat, and the faint, metallic tang of blood that seems to linger in every crevice. Your footsteps echo, joining a chorus of distant sounds, the clatter of armor, the mutter of voices, the sharp caw of a raven perched somewhere high above. The tower is awake, and you are now part of its restless, uneasy rhythm. Your cell is not what you expected. It is neither a dungeon nor a chamber, but something in between, a small, windowless room with walls so thick that the outside world feels impossibly distant. There is a pallet of straw in one corner, a bucket in another, and a single, battered stool beside a rough-hewn table. Scratched into the stone above the table are dozens of names, some in careful script, others in desperate, jagged lines. You run your fingers over them, wondering who these people were and what became of them. The door slams shut behind you with a finality that leaves no room for hope. You sit on the pallet, drawing your knees up to your chest, and listen. At first, all you can hear is your own breathing, ragged and uneven. But slowly, other sounds begin to filter in. The shuffle of footsteps in the corridor, the low murmur of a guard's voice, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Life, in the tower, goes on. Time passes in fits and starts. You lose track of the hours, measuring the day only by the dimming of the light that seeps in from under the door. Hunger gnaws at your belly, and you are grateful when the jailer appears with a crust of bread and a cup of water. He does not speak, and you do not ask questions. There is an unspoken rule here. Silence is safer. As the hours stretch into days, you begin to notice the routines that govern life within these walls. The guards change shifts with military precision, their boots striking the flagstones in perfect unison. The prisoners, those you glimpse through the bars of your cell, move with the wary caution of animals in a cage. Some are defiant, their eyes bright with anger or madness. Others are broken, their spirits crushed by the weight of their confinement. You learn quickly that the tower is a place of hierarchies, both official and unofficial. The yeoman warders, with their distinctive uniforms and air of authority, command respect and fear in equal measure. The jailers, gruff and indifferent, hold the keys to your comfort or your misery. And among the prisoners, there are those who wield influence, trading favors and information in exchange for scraps of food or a moment of privacy. Your own place in this world is uncertain. You are neither noble nor notorious, just another soul lost in the labyrinth. But you watch, and you listen, and you learn. The tower, for all its cruelty, is a place of stories, stories carved into stone, whispered in the dark, or shouted in defiance from the scaffold. You begin to collect these stories, piecing them together like fragments of a shattered mirror. One night, as you lie awake on your pallet, you hear a voice from the cell next to yours. It is a woman's voice, low and steady, reciting a prayer in Latin. You do not understand the words, but the cadence is soothing, a reminder that faith endures even in the darkest places. Another night, you hear the sound of weeping a man, sobbing quietly, his grief muffled by the stone walls. You do not know his name, but you feel a kinship with him, bound by the shared misery of your captivity. The days are marked by small rituals. In the morning, you wash your face with water from a cracked jug, scrubbing away the grime of the night. You eat your bread slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a feast. You pace the length of your cell, counting your steps 10 from wall to wall, 10 back again. It is a small freedom, but it is yours. Sometimes, you are allowed into the courtyard, under the watchful eyes of the guards. The air is fresher here, tinged with the sin of grass and earth. You see other prisoners, their faces pale and drawn, their eyes darting nervously. There is little conversation. Trust is a rare commodity in the tower, but you exchange nods, silent acknowledgments of your shared fate. The ravens are always present, their black feathers gleaming in the sunlight. They hop along the walls, watching with bright, intelligent eyes. The guards treat them with a curious respect, tossing them scraps of meat and muttering superstitions under their breath. You have heard the legend, if the ravens ever leave the tower, the kingdom will fall. You wonder if it is true, and if so, what it would take to make them fly away. As the days turn to weeks, you begin to change. The fear that once gripped you has faded, replaced by a grim determination. You are no longer a victim, but a survivor. You learn to read the moods of the guards, to anticipate their movements and avoid their wrath. You learn to ration your food, to conserve your strength for the challenges ahead. You also learn to hope in small, cautious ways. Hope is a dangerous thing in the tower, but it is also a lifeline. You cling to memories of the world outside, the warmth of the sun on your face, the sound of laughter, the taste of fresh bread. You imagine your family, your friends, searching for you, refusing to give up. You tell yourself that you will see them again, that you will walk free from these walls. But hope is not enough. The tower is a place of tests, and you know that yours is coming. You have heard the stories of interrogations and tortures, of confessions wrung from broken bodies and shattered minds. You do not know what awaits you, but you are determined to face it with courage. One evening, as the light fades and the shadows lengthen, the jailer appears at your door. He unlocks the cell and gestures for you to follow. Your heart pounds in your chest as you step into the corridor, your legs trembling with fear and anticipation. You are led through a series of twisting passages, past doors that hide secrets you can only imagine. At last, you arrive at a small chamber, lit by a single candle. A man sits at a table, his face hidden in shadow. He gestures for you to sit, his voice low and calm. He asks you questions about your life, your loyalties, your alleged crimes. You answer as best you can, choosing your words with care. The man listens, his expression unreadable. When the questioning is over, you are returned to your cell. The door closes behind you, and you are alone once more. You sit on your pallet, your mind racing with fear and uncertainty. You do not know what the future holds, but you are determined to endure. The tower is a place of suffering, but also of survival. You have learned its rhythms, its secrets, its dangers. You have learned to hope, and to fear, and to fight. You are no longer the person you were when you entered these walls. You are something new, something stronger. And as you lie awake in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the tower, you know that your story is not yet over. The cell is your entire world now. Its boundaries are absolute, its dimensions unyielding. The moment the heavy wooden door slammed shut behind you, you became a creature of stone and shadow, subject to the whims of time and the indifferent mercy of your captors. The first thing you notice is the cold. It seeps up from the flagstones, wraps around your ankles, and settles in your bones. No matter how tightly you wrap yourself in the scratchy, threadbare blanket, the chill never leaves. It is a living thing, as much a part of the tower as the walls themselves. Your cell is little more than a cavity carved into the ancient fortress. The walls are thick, built to withstand siege and rebellion, but they do nothing to keep out the damp. Water trickles down in thin, persistent streams, pooling in the corners and feeding a slick green moss that creeps along the mortar. The air is heavy with the scent of mildew, old straw, and the sharp, acrid tang of fear. There is a bucket in one corner, a crude concession to human dignity, and a pile of straw that serves as your bed. You quickly learn to shake out the straw before lying down. There are things living in it that bite. Above the straw, a single narrow window is set high in the wall. It is little more than a slit, barely wide enough for a hand, and barred with thick iron rods. Sometimes, if you stand on your toes and crane your neck, you can catch a glimpse of the sky, a patch of gray, sometimes blue, sometimes black, but always distant. The window is your only connection to the world beyond the tower. Through it, you hear the muffled sounds of life, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the caw of ravens circling the battlements, the occasional shouts of guards, or the cries of other prisoners. You quickly learn the rhythm of the cell. The jailer comes twice a day, sliding a tray of food through a gap at the bottom of the door. Breakfast is a crust of bread, sometimes hard as stone, and a cup of water that tastes faintly of rust. Supper is a thin gruel, sometimes with a scrap of meat floating in it, sometimes not. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, because you never know when the next meal will come. Hunger becomes a constant companion, a dull ache that sharpens your senses and makes you dream of feasts. The cell is never truly quiet. At night, the rats come out, their claws scratching against the stone as they search for crumbs. Sometimes, you hear them fighting, their squeals echoing in the darkness. You learn to keep your food close and your blanket tucked tight. The rats are bold, unafraid of the living, and you suspect they have feasted on the dead more than once. During the day, the sounds of the tower filter into your cell. You hear the guards as they march past, their boots striking the stones in a steady rhythm. Sometimes, you catch snatches of conversation, complaints about the weather, gossip about the prisoners, rumors of executions. You listen carefully, hoping for news, but the words are often muffled and indistinct. Occasionally, you hear the cries of other prisoners, pleas for mercy, curses hurled at unseen tormentors, prayers whispered in a dozen languages. The walls of the tower have heard it all. You mark the passage of time by the light that filters through the window. In the morning, the cell is filled with a pale, watery glow. By midday, the light is stronger, casting sharp shadows on the walls. In the evening, the cell grows dim, the shadows lengthening until they swallow the room whole. At night, the darkness is complete, broken only by the occasional flicker of torchlight in the corridor. Sleep comes fitfully. The straw is lumpy and scratchy, and the cold seeps in no matter how you curl up. You dream of home, of warmth, of freedom. Sometimes, you dream of the tower itself, a labyrinth of endless corridors, each one leading back to your cell. You wake with a start, heart pounding, only to find yourself still trapped, still alone. The days blur together. You scratch marks on the wall to keep track, but soon lose count. Time loses meaning in the tower. There is only the present, an endless succession of moments, each one as gray and unremarkable as the last. You find ways to occupy your mind. You recite prayers, poems, psalms you remember from happier days. You count the stones in the wall, trace the patterns of moss and lichen, invent stories about the people who carved their names into the stone. Some days, you talk to yourself, just to hear a human voice. Other days, you sit in silence, listening to the heartbeat of the tower. Sometimes, you are visited by the jailer. He is a large man, with a face like a slab of stone and hands as big as hams. He rarely speaks, except to bark orders or deliver threats. But every now and then, you catch a glimmer of something softer in his eyes, a flicker of pity, perhaps a regret. You wonder what brought him to this place, what stories he carries behind his stony facade. Once, you are visited by a priest. He brings a small wooden cross and a few words of comfort. He listens to your confession, offers absolution, and prays for your soul. His presence is a balm, a reminder that there is still kindness in the world, even in the shadow of the scaffold. You learn to fear the sound of keys in the lock. Sometimes it means a meal or a visit from the priest. Other times it means something far worse, a summons to the torture chamber, an interrogation, a beating. The guards are unpredictable, their moods shifting with the wind. You learn to read their faces, to anticipate their anger, to avoid their notice whenever possible. Through it all, the tower endures. Its walls are thick, its secrets well kept. You are just one of many who have passed through its gates, one more soul lost to its endless hunger. But you refuse to give in to despair. You hold on a hope, however fragile, that one day you will see the sky again, feel the sun on your face, walk free from these walls. Until then, you endure. You survive. You become part of the tower, and the tower becomes part of you. The days inside the tower pass in a slow, grinding procession. You mark them with scratches on the wall, but the monotony soon makes you lose count. The only certainty is the jailer's routine, as regular as the tolling of the city's bells. His presence is both a curse and a comfort, a reminder that you are not forgotten, but also that you are never truly alone. It is always the same sound that heralds his approach, the heavy clatter of boots on stone, the metallic jangle of keys swinging from his belt. The footsteps echo down the corridor, growing louder, then pausing outside your door. For a moment, there is only silence, broken by the faint squeak of the key as it turns in the lock. The door swings open with a groan, and the jailer steps inside. He is a large man, broad-shouldered and thick-necked, with hands that look as though they could snap a bone without effort. His face is set in a permanent scowl, the lines etched deep by years of frowning. His eyes, small and dark, skin the cell with practiced indifference. You have seen him before, of course. He is the one who brought you here, the one who delivers your meals and empties your bucket. But each visit is a new test, a new opportunity for things to go wrong. He carries a tray in one hand, the other resting on the hilt of a short club tucked into his belt. The tray holds your breakfast, a crust of bread, a wedge of hard cheese, and a cup of water. He sets it down on the table with a thud, then stands back, arms folded across his chest. "Eat," he grunts, his voice rough as gravel. "You'll need your strength." You nod, moving to the table and tearing off a piece of bread. It is stale, but hunger makes it bearable. You glance up at the jailer, but he does not meet your gaze. Instead, he surveys the cell, as lingering on the marks you have scratched into the wall. Counting the days, he asks, his tone unreadable. You hesitate, unsure whether to answer. The wrong word could mean a beating or worse. But something in his voice, an edge of curiosity, perhaps, makes you risk a reply. "Yes," you say quietly. It helps. He grunts again, neither approving nor condemning. He moves to the window, peering out at the sliver of sky visible through the bars. For a moment, you wonder what he sees, freedom, perhaps, or just another day in a life spent behind walls. The jailer turns back to you, his expression hardening. "Don't get any ideas," he warns. "No one escapes the tower. Not alive, anyway." You nod, swallowing your fear along with another bite of bread. You have heard the stories of desperate men who tried to dig their way out, or bribe the guards, or slip past the sentries in the dead of night. Most were caught, and their punishments were swift and brutal. The tower does not forgive. He steps closer, looming over you. You keep your head down, do as you're told, and maybe you'll see the outside again. Cause trouble, and you'll wish you hadn't. His words hang in the air, heavy with threat. You nod again, forcing yourself to meet his gaze. There is nothing to be gained by showing weakness, but neither is there any point in defiance. The jailer is the gatekeeper of your world, the one who decides whether you eat, whether you freeze, whether you live or die. He lingers a moment longer, then turns to leave. At the door, he pauses, glancing back over his shoulder. For the briefest instant, his expression softens, a flicker of something human beneath the mask of authority. "Try to sleep," he says quietly. "Tomorrow might be worse." The door closes behind him with a finality that leaves you shivering. You sit at the table, staring at the food, your appetite gone. The jailer's words echo in your mind, mingling with the memories of all those who have passed through these walls before you. You wonder what kind of man he is, this keeper of keys and secrets. Does he go home at night, to a family who knows nothing of the suffering he oversees? Or is he as much a prisoner as you, bound to the tower by duty and circumstance? You finish your meal in silence, the bread and cheese sitting heavy in your stomach. The cell feels smaller than ever, the walls pressing in on all sides. You lie down on the straw, pulling the blanket tight around your shoulders, and close your eyes. Sleep comes slowly, haunted by dreams of escape and punishment, of freedom just out of reach. In the darkness, you hear the jailer's footsteps echoing down the corridor, a reminder that morning will come, and with it, another visit, another test. And so you wait, counting the hours, the days, the heartbeats. The jailer will return, as he always does, and you will endure, as you always have. The tower is a place of silence, but it is also a place of voices, soft, furtive, and persistent. In the hours between the jailer's visits, when the only company is the scurrying of rats and the slow drip of water from the ceiling, you begin to notice the other sounds that fill the void. They come to you in fragments, a cough from the next cell, the scrape of a boot on stone, the faintest murmur of conversation echoing through the corridors. At first, you think you are imagining things. But soon, you realize that the tower is alive with stories passed from prisoner to prisoner, from guard to guard, from one generation to the next. They slip through the cracks in the walls, carried on the breath of the wind and the wings of the ravens that haunt the battlements. In the tower, gossip is as vital as bread or water. It is the currency of hope, fear, and survival. You learn to listen. At night, when the guard's footsteps grow distant and the world seems to shrink to the size of your cell, you press your ear to the cold stone and wait. Sometimes you catch only a word or two: traitor, mercy, execution. But sometimes, if you're patient, you hear entire stories unfold. There are tales of the famous and the infamous. And Bullen, the queen who lost her head for love and ambition, is a name spoken with both awe and pity. Some say her ghost walks the corridors at night, clutching her severed head and weeping for the daughter she left behind. Others claim to have seen her in the chapel, kneeling in silent prayer, her face serene and untroubled. Then there is Guy Fawkes, the plotter who tried to blow up Parliament and was broken on the rack for his troubles. The older prisoners speak of him with a kind of grim respect. He dared to challenge the king, and though he failed, he did not betray his friends. They say his screams echoed through the tower for days, a warning to all who would defy the crown. You hear, too, of the princes in the tower, the two young boys who vanished without a trace, their fate a mystery that haunts the kingdom still. Some say they were murdered by their uncle, others by a jealous rival. There are those who claim to have seen their ghosts, small and pale, wandering the battlements in search of justice. Not all the stories are of royalty. There are tales of commoners, thieves, and soldiers who met their end within these walls. The blacksmith who was accused of forging false coins and hanged from the battlements. The washerwoman who was caught stealing bread and thrown into the river. The soldier who fell asleep on watch and was flogged until he could no longer stand. The guards have their own stories, too. They speak of the Bloody Tower, where the worst of the prisoners are kept, and of the Traitor's Gate, where the condemned are brought in by boat, their faces pale with fear. They whisper about the torture chamber, with its rack and its iron maiden, and about the executioner, who sharpens his axe every morning whether he needs to or not. You learn to sort truth from fiction, fact from fantasy. Some stories are clearly exaggerated. A prisoner who escaped by turning into a raven, a ghost who can pass through walls, a treasure buried beneath the White Tower. But others ring true, their details too precise to be mere invention. The gossip is not always about the past. There are rumors about the present, too, about who is to be executed next, who has bribed a guard for extra food, who is planning an escape. These stories are whispered in the shadows, passed from cell to cell in a code of glances and gestures. You learn to keep your own secrets, to trust no one completely. Sometimes, the guards bring news from the outside world. They speak of battles lost and won, of plagues and famines, of kings and queens who rise and fall with the turning of the seasons. You cling to these scraps of information, piecing together a picture of a world that seems impossibly distant. The gossip is a lifeline. It connects you to the other prisoners, to the guards, to the long history of the tower itself. It reminds you that you are not alone, that others have suffered and survived as you do now. It gives you hope, and sometimes it gives you fear. One night, as you lie awake, you hear a new story, a rumor that the king is considering a general pardon, that some prisoners may soon be set free. The news spreads like wildfire, igniting hope in even the most despairing hearts. For days, the tower buzzes with anticipation. But then the jailer arrives, his face grim, and the hope dies as quickly as it was born. There will be no pardon, not this time. You learn to guard your heart, to take the gossip for what it is, a distraction, a comfort, a warning. But you never stop listening. In the tower, stories are all you have. And so, night after night, you press your ear to the wall, waiting for the next tale to begin. The tower is a fortress, a palace, a prison, but, above all, it is a place of fear. This fear is not born only of the cold stone, the iron bars, or the endless days of hunger and isolation. It is something deeper, more primal, that seeps into your bones with every whispered rumor and every echoing footstep. And nowhere is that fear more concentrated than in the stories of the torture chamber. You first hear of it in fragments, snatches of conversation between guards, a hurried whisper from a fellow prisoner through the wall, a shudder in the jailer's voice when he passes by a certain door. They call it the room below, the rack house, or simply the place. No one speaks of it for long, and no one speaks of it loudly. But everyone knows it is there. The torture chamber is not part of your daily routine, but it is part of your daily dread. It is the threat that hangs over every question, every accusation, every silence. You imagine it constantly. A room deep beneath the white tower, its walls slick with damp, its air thick with the smell of old blood and terror. You picture the instruments, racks and manacles, iron boots and thumbscrews, ropes and pulleys and things for which you have no name. You wonder if you will be taken there, if you will survive it, if anyone ever truly does. One night, the fear becomes real. The jailer arrives at your cell with 2 guards, their faces shadowed and unreadable in the flickering torchlight. They unlock your door and gesture for you to stand. Your legs are weak, your heart pounding so loudly you think it must echo down the corridor. You follow them, your feet dragging, as they lead you through a maze of passages that seem to descend forever. The air grows colder, heavier, as you go deeper. The walls close in, the light dims. The only sounds are the shuffle of boots and the distant, rhythmic drip of water. At last, you reach a heavy wooden door bound in iron. One of the guards produces a key, and with a groan, the door swings open. Inside, the room is exactly as you imagined, yet worse, because it is real. The walls are lined with chains and hooks, the floor stained dark in places where no amount of scrubbing could erase the past. In the center stands the rack, a monstrous contraption of wood and rope, its purpose unmistakable. Nearby, a brazier glows with coals, and beside it, a table holds an array of tools, pincers, knives, branding irons, and things whose function you can only guess. A man waits for you in the shadows. He is not large, nor particularly imposing, but there is something in his eyes that chills you more than the cold stone ever could. He introduces himself as the royal interrogator. His voice is calm, almost gentle, but you sense the steel beneath it. He asks you questions about your alleged crimes, your friends, your family, your loyalties. At first, you answer as best you can, your voice trembling, your mind racing. But as the questions grow more pointed, more insistent, you begin to falter. You sense that no answer will be enough, that the truth is not what he seeks. The interrogator signals to the guards, and they move with practiced efficiency. You are strapped to the rack, the ropes biting into your wrist and ankles. The interrogator leans close, his breath warm against your ear. "This is your last chance," he whispers. "Tell us what we want to know, and this can end." You shake your head, or try to. The guards begin to turn the wheel, slowly at first, then with increasing force. Pain blossoms in your limbs, sharp and immediate, then grows into something vast and all-consuming. Your joints stretch, your muscles scream. You bite your lip to keep from crying out, but the pain is relentless, merciless. Eventually, you cannot help yourself. You scream, a raw, animal sound that echoes off the stone walls and seems to go on forever. The interrogator watches, his face expressionless. He asks again, and again, and again. Each time, the pain grows worse. You lose track of time, minutes, hours, days. It is all the same. The world shrinks to the agony in your body and the cold satisfaction in the interrogator's eyes. At some point, you break. Everyone does, eventually. You say what they want to hear, or what you think they want to hear. Names, places, confessions, anything to make the pain stop. The interrogator nods, satisfied, and the guards release you from the rack. You collapse to the floor, your body racked with sobs, your mind a blur of shame and relief. They drag you back to your cell. The journey is a haze of pain and confusion. You are barely aware of the guards' hands on your arms, the roughness of the stone beneath your feet, the cold air biting at your skin. When they finally throw you onto the straw, you curl into a ball and weep. The days that follow are a blur. Your body aches in ways you did not think possible. Your joints are swollen, your muscles torn. You cannot sleep, cannot eat, cannot think. The jailer brings you food and water, but you can barely lift your head to acknowledge him. He looks at you with something like pity, but there is nothing he can do. You are changed, inside and out. The pain lingers, a constant reminder of your weakness, your failure. You replay the interrogation in your mind, over and over, wondering if you could have held out longer, if you could have protected your secrets, your friends. But it is too late. The tower has taken what it wanted and left you broken. The other prisoners know. They see the way you move, the way you flinch at every sound. They do not speak of it, but you see the understanding in their eyes. Some have been where you have been. Others know they will be soon enough. You tell yourself that you survived, that you endured. But the truth is more complicated. You are alive, yes, but something inside you has died. The tower has claimed another piece of your soul. And yet, life goes on. The days pass, the routines resume. The jailer brings your meals, the guards march by, the ravens caw outside your window. The pain fades, slowly, but the memory remains. You are no longer afraid of the torture chamber. You are afraid of what it has made you. You begin to rebuild, piece by piece. You force yourself to eat, to move, to speak. You listen to the gossip, the stories, the rumors. You cling to hope, however faint. You remind yourself that others have survived, that you can too. The tower is a place of suffering, but also of endurance. You have learned its lessons, paid its price. You are no longer the person you were when you entered. You are something new, something stronger, and perhaps something more dangerous. And somewhere, deep inside, you make a vow. If you ever leave this place, you will never forget what you endured. You will never let them break you again. In the Tower of London, the presence of the ravens is as old as the stones themselves. Their black wings cast fleeting shadows over the courtyard, their harsh cries echoing beneath the battlements. To the outside world, they are just birds, clever, scavenging, sometimes unsettling. But to those within these walls, especially the prisoners, the ravens are omens, messengers, and sometimes the only witnesses to secrets never meant to be spoken. You first notice them on a morning when the sky is low and heavy, threatening rain. The air is thick with the scent of wet stone and the faint, metallic tang of old blood. You hear the ravens before you see them, a chorus of caws, sharp and insistent, as if they are arguing over some ancient grievance. You shuffle to your window, the narrow slit in the wall that offers your only view of the world beyond your cell. There, on the parapet, a half-dozen ravens perch, their feathers slick and shining in the weak sunlight. They watch everything. Their heads turn with uncanny intelligence, black eyes glittering as they survey the courtyard below. You see the guards, the jailers, the other prisoners being marched from one building to another. You see the executioner sharpening his axe, the cup tossing straps to the birds, the priest crossing himself as he hurries past. The ravens see it all, and you wonder what secrets they have carried from one reign to the next, what truths they have witnessed and kept to themselves. The guards treat the ravens with a curious mixture of fear and reverence. You hear them mutter that the kingdom will fall if the ravens ever leave the tower. Some say the birds are the souls of the executed, returned to keep watch over the living. Others claim they are spies for the king, their eyes and ears everywhere. You watch as a beefeater in his bright red uniform scatters meat for them each morning, bowing his head in a gesture that is half superstition, half respect. For the prisoners, the ravens are both comfort and curse. Some say that if a raven lands on your windowsill, it means death is coming soon. Others believe that if you feed them, they will carry a message to your loved ones outside the walls. You try it once, breaking off a crumb of your stale bread and tossing it onto the ledge. A raven swoops down, snatches the morsel, and fixes you with a gaze that feels almost human. For a moment, you imagine that it understands your plight, that it might carry your hopes and fears beyond the tower's reach. As the days pass, you begin to pay attention to the raven's comings and goings. You notice that they are always present at executions, gathering on the rooftops and walls, watching with an eerie patience as the condemned are led to the scaffold. Their cries rise above the crowd, harsh and triumphant, as if they are claiming the soul for their own. Afterward, they swoop down to pick at the remains, indifferent to the sorrow and horror of the living. On sleepless nights, you listen to the ravens outside your window, their calls echoing through the darkness. Sometimes they sound like laughter, other times like warnings. You wonder if they are mocking you, or if they are trying to tell you something. You remember the stories you heard as a child of witches who could speak to birds, of omens and prophecies written in the flight of crows and ravens. You are not sure you believe in such things, but in the tower, belief is a fragile thing, easily broken and just as easily mended. One evening, as the sun sets behind the white tower, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, you see a raven land on the windowsill of the cell across from yours. The prisoner inside, a gaunt, hollow-eyed man who has not spoken in days, looks up, his face pale and drawn. The raven cocks its head, lets out a single, piercing caw, and then flies away. The next morning, the man is gone. No one says where he has been taken, but you know. Everyone knows. After that, you find yourself watching the ravens more closely, searching for patterns in their movements, for meaning in their cries. You begin to believe, just a little, that they are more than birds, that they are guardians, or judges, or perhaps just the last free souls in a place built to crush all hope. The days grow shorter, the nights colder. The ravens remain, their black shapes stark against the gray sky. You take comfort in their presence, even as you fear what they might portend. In a world ruled by iron and stone, by cruelty and despair, the ravens are a reminder that some things cannot be tamed, that some spirits remain wild and unbroken. And so you wait, listening to their calls, watching their flight, hoping that when your time comes, they will carry your story beyond the tower's walls, into the world that still lies just out of reach. In the Tower of London, there are figures who move with the authority of kings and the indifference of stone. There are the yeoman warders, the royal clerks, the priests, and the jailers. But there is one figure who stands apart from all the rest, a figure who inspires a silent, universal dread. He is the executioner, and his shadow falls long and cold across every soul within these walls. You first see him not as a man, but as a myth. Whispers of his presence drift through the tower like smoke. The way he sharpens his axe each morning, the black hood he wears, the silence that follows him wherever he goes. The other prisoners speak of him in hushed tones, never daring to utter his name. To do so, it is said, is to invite his attention. It is on a gray, wind-whipped morning that you catch your first true glimpse. You are being marched across the courtyard, flanked by 2 guards, your wrists bound and your heart thudding in your chest. The sky is heavy with clouds, and the air smells of rain and old iron. As you pass the scaffold, you see him, tall and broad-shouldered, clad in dark leather, his face hidden beneath a hood. He stands beside the block, a great axe resting against his shoulder, its blade gleaming even in the dull light. He does not move. He does not speak. He simply waits, as if he has all the time in the world. The guards quicken their pace, and you are hurried past, but you cannot help glancing back. The executioner's head turns almost imperceptibly, and for a moment, you feel the weight of his gaze upon you. It is not malice you sense, nor even cruelty. It is something colder, more ancient, a kind of resignation, as if he is as much a prisoner of fate as those he is tasked to kill. From that day on, you become acutely aware of the executioner's presence. You see him in the courtyard, sharpening his axe with slow, deliberate strokes. You see him in the chapel, kneeling at the back, his head bowed in silent prayer. You see him in your dreams, standing at the foot of your bed, his face hidden, his hands stained with the blood of the condemned. The other prisoners speak of him with a mixture of fear and fascination. Some say he is a monster, a butcher who takes pleasure in his work. Others claim he is a man of honor, burdened by the weight of his duty. There are stories, always stories, of the condemned who begged for mercy, of those who met their end with dignity, of those who cursed the executioner with their last breath. It is said that he remembers every face, every name, that he carries the souls of the dead with him wherever he goes. You begin to notice the rituals that surround the executions. The condemned are given a final meal, a chance to confess their sins, a brief moment to make peace with their fate. The executioner visits them the night before, offering a word of comfort or a silent nod. On the morning of the execution, he prepares his tools with meticulous care, oiling the axe, testing its edge, arranging the block and the straw to catch the blood. The executions themselves are swift, but never silent. The crowd gathers in the courtyard, their faces a blur of curiosity, horror, and anticipation. The condemned is led to the scaffold, their steps slow and heavy. The priest offers a final prayer, the executioner raises his axe, and in a single, practiced motion, it is done. The crowd gasps, the ravens cry, and the tower absorbs another secret into its ancient stones. You wonder what it is like to live with such a burden. Does the executioner dream of those he has killed? Does he see their faces when he closes his eyes? Does he believe in forgiveness, in redemption, in the possibility of a life beyond the tower's walls? Or is he, like you, trapped by circumstance, doomed to repeat the same grim ritual until the end of his days? One evening, as the sun sets behind the battlements, you find yourself alone in the chapel. You kneel in the shadows, your hands clasped in prayer, your mind racing with fear and uncertainty. The door creaks open, and the executioner enters. He moves with surprising grace, his footsteps barely audible on the stone floor. He kneels beside you, his head still in place, his hands folded in his lap. For a long moment, neither of you speaks. The silence is heavy, but not uncomfortable. At last, he turns to you, his voice low and steady. "Do not fear me," he says. "Fear the world that made me necessary." You look at him, searching for some sign of humanity beneath the mask. You see only his eyes, dark, weary, and impossibly old. "Do you remember them?" you ask, your voice barely more than a whisper. He nods, once. "Everyone." You want to ask more, but the words catching your throat. The executioner rises, bows his head, and slips out of the chapel as quietly as he entered. You are left alone with your thoughts, your prayers, and the knowledge that, in the tower, mercy is a rare and precious thing. From that night on, you see the executioner differently. He is no longer a monster, nor a myth, but a man, flawed, burdened, and as much a victim of fate as any prisoner. You wonder if, when your time comes, you will meet your end with dignity or with fear. You wonder if the executioner will remember your name. The days pass, and the shadow of the axe grows ever closer. You watch the executioner in the courtyard, his figure stark against the gray sky, and you realize that, in the Tower of London, everyone is waiting for something: freedom, forgiveness, or the fall of the blade. And so you wait, counting your breaths, your prayers, your regrets. The executioner's shadow lengthens, and you know that, sooner or later, it will fall across you. Time in the Tower of London is a peculiar beast. It does not flow as it does in the outside world, with the steady rhythm of sunrise and sunset, the familiar cadence of market days and festivals, the predictable cycle of seasons. Here, within these ancient stone walls, time stretches and contracts like a living thing, sometimes racing forward in a blur of terror and confusion, sometimes slowing to an excruciating crawl that makes each heartbeat feel like an eternity. You have been here for how long? Days? Weeks? Months? The marks you scratched into the wall have become a meaningless constellation, a record of imprisonment that tells you nothing except that you are still alive, still breathing, still waiting. And in the tower, waiting is both punishment and profession. The waiting begins at dawn, or what you assume is dawn, when the faint gray light seeks through the narrow window of your cell. You wait for the jailer to bring your morning meal, a crust of bread, perhaps, or a bowl of thin gruel that tastes of dust and desperation. You wait for the sound of his footsteps in the corridor, for the rattle of keys, for the creak of the door. Sometimes he comes early, sometimes late. Sometimes he doesn't come at all, and the waiting stretches into hunger, into thirst, into a gnawing emptiness that feels like it might consume you from within. You wait for news. Any news. A whisper from a guard, a rumor passed from cell to cell, a scrap of information about the world beyond the tower. Has the king fallen ill? Has war been declared? Has plague returned to London? The not knowing is its own kind of torture, a slow poison that seeps into your thoughts and dreams. You imagine your family searching for you, petitioning for your release, or perhaps mourning you as already dead. You imagine your friends continuing their lives, your name fading from their conversations, your face becoming a distant memory. You imagine the seasons changing, the world turning, while you remain frozen in this stone purgatory. You wait for interrogation. The royal questioners come at irregular intervals, their faces impassive, their methods increasingly desperate. They ask the same questions over and over, as if repetition might somehow change your answers. They promise leniency if you confess, mercy if you implicate others, freedom if you tell them what they want to hear. But you have seen enough to know that promises in the tower are as substantial as the morning mist that clings to the Thames, beautiful, perhaps, but quick to vanish in the harsh light of reality. You wait for torture. The threat of it hangs over every interaction, every question, every silence. You have heard the screams echoing through the corridors, have seen the broken bodies of those who return from the chamber below. You have felt the cold dread that settles in your stomach when the guards come at an unusual hour, when they avoid your eyes, when they tell you to follow without explanation. Each time they pass your cell without stopping, you feel a shameful relief, followed immediately by guilt. Someone else is suffering tonight. Someone else is breaking. Someone else is confessing to crimes they may or may not have committed, just to make the pain stop. You wait for execution. The scaffold in the courtyard is a constant reminder of the fate that awaits many who enter the tower. You have seen the executioner sharpening his axe, testing its edge with a thumb, nodding with grim satisfaction. You have watched as prisoners are led to their deaths, some weeping, some praying, some walking with a dignity that seems almost supernatural in the face of such terror. You wonder if you will face your end with courage or with fear, with defiance or with resignation. You wonder if anyone will remember your name. But most of all, you wait for the hours to pass, for the days to end, for sleep to come and grant you temporary escape from the reality of your confinement. Sleep, when it comes, is fitful and haunted. You dream of open fields, of running until your lungs burn and your legs ache, of skies so vast and blue that they make your heart hurt. You dream of faces, your mother, your father, your siblings, your friends. You dream of home. And then you wake, and the waiting begins again. The cell becomes your entire world. You memorize every crack in the stone, every stain on the floor, every shadow that moves across the wall as the light changes. You give names to the spiders that build their webs in the corners, to the rats that scurry along the edges of the room, to the birds that sometimes perch on your windowsill. They become your companions, your audience, your confidants. You tell them your secrets, your fears, your hopes. They listen with more patience than any human ever has. You develop rituals to mark the passage of time, to give structure to the endless waiting. You pace the length of your cell, counting steps. You recite prayers, poems, songs, anything you can remember from your life before. You exercise, pushing your body until your muscles scream and sweat drips from your brow. Anything to feel alive, to remind yourself that you are more than just a prisoner, that there is a world beyond these walls, that someday, somehow, this waiting will end. The waiting changes you. It strips away pretense, ego, vanity. It reveals what you truly are beneath the layers of social convention and personal history. Some prisoners break under the weight of it, retreating into madness or despair. Others find a kind of strength they never knew they possessed, a core of resilience that cannot be broken by isolation or fear. You are not yet sure which category you belong to. Perhaps both. Perhaps neither. You learn to find meaning in small things. The way the light catches dust motes floating in the air. The sound of rain on the stone outside your window. The taste of water, cool and clean, when you are parched with thirst. The feel of the rough blanket against your skin when the night grows cold. These tiny sensations become anchors, tethering you to the physical world when your mind threatens to drift away on currents of memory and regret. You learn to listen. The tower speaks if you know how to hear it. The creak of timber, the groan of stone, the whisper of wind through cracks in the mortar. These are the voices of the tower, telling stories of all who have waited here before you. You hear the guards as they change shifts, their boots striking the flagstones in a rhythm as familiar as your own heartbeat. You hear the ravens outside, their harsh cries carrying on the wind. You hear the distant sounds of London, church bells, the cries of vendors, the rumble of cartwheels on cobblestones. These sounds remind you that life continues, that the world has not ended, that there is still hope. Sometimes, in the depths of night, when the tower is at its quietest, you hear other prisoners. A cough, a sob, a whispered prayer. These sounds are both comfort and torment, proof that you are not alone, but also reminders of the shared suffering that fills these walls. You develop a kind of silent communion with these unseen companions. You tap on the wall, and sometimes, someone taps back. A simple code emerges. 1 tap for yes, 2 for no, 3 for danger. It is not much, but it is human contact, and in the tower, that is precious beyond measure. The waiting teaches you patience. Not the gentle patience of a gardener watching seeds sprout, but the hard-won patience of a hunter tracking prey through a harsh winter. It is a patience born of necessity, of survival, of the knowledge that there is no alternative. You cannot force the door to open, cannot command the sun to rise, cannot will your freedom into existence. You can only wait, and watch, and listen, and hope. And so you wait. For rescue, for release, for death, for something, anything, to break the monotony of your confinement. You wait because you must, because there is nothing else to do, because waiting is the only form of resistance left to you. You wait, and in your waiting, you find a strange kind of strength, a resilience you never knew you possessed. The tower has stood for centuries, has seen kings rise and fall, has witnessed the sweep of history as it rushes past like the Thames below its walls. And through it all, prisoners have waited, just as you wait now. Some waited for mercy that never came. Some waited for justice that was long delayed. Some waited for death, and found it. Some waited for freedom, and against all odds, found it too. You do not know which fate awaits you, but you know that you will face it as you have faced everything else in this place, with the quiet dignity of one who has learned the art of waiting, who has found strength in stillness, who has discovered that time, for all its cruelty, cannot touch the core of who you are. And so, as the light fades and another day in the tower comes to an end, you settle onto your pallet of straw, pull the thin blanket around your shoulders, and prepare to wait through another night. Tomorrow will come, as it always does, and with it, perhaps, an end to the waiting, or perhaps just more of the same. Either way, you will endure. You have no choice. In the Tower of London, waiting is not just what you do, it is what you are. You know the day is different before you even open your eyes. There's a hush in the corridor, a tension in the footsteps of the guards, a sense that the air itself is holding its breath. You sit up slowly, every muscle protesting, and wait. The tower is a place where routine is everything, and any deviation, no matter how slight, means trouble. The key turns in the lock, and your jailer appears, flanked by two guards you haven't seen before. Their armor is cleaner, their eyes sharper, and the way they stand tells you everything you need to know. They are here for business, not boredom. The jailer grunts, "On your feet," and you obey, because in the tower, hesitation is a luxury you can't afford. You're marched down a corridor you've never traveled, past doors that seem to watch you as you pass, past the chapel where the condemned pray for mercy, past the courtyard where the ravens hop and squabble over scraps. The guards say nothing, but their silence is heavy with meaning. You count your steps, not because you expect to escape, but because it's something to do with your fear. They lead you into a chamber that is both grand and terrifying. The ceiling is high, the walls hung with tapestries that depict battles and coronations, and, if you look closely, executions. At the center of the room is a table, and behind it sits a man who radiates authority like a fire radiates heat. He is not dressed like a guard or a noble. His robes are dark, his hair cropped short, his eyes sharp and cold as river stones. He does not look up as you enter. He is writing, and the scratch of his quill is the only sound in the room. You are made to stand before him, your hands clasped in front of you, your heart thudding like a war drum. The guards take up positions behind you, and the jailer fades into the background. The man at the table finishes his writing, sets down his quill, and finally looks up. He studies you for a long moment, saying nothing. His gaze is not cruel, but it is not kind, either. It is the gaze of a man who has seen too much, who has heard every lie and every truth, who knows that the difference between the two is often a matter of timing. "Sit," he says, and you do, because his voice brooks no argument. He introduces himself as the royal interrogator. His name is not important. No one remembers it, not even the prisoners who survive his questioning. He is the king's voice, the king's eyes, the king's will made flesh. He asks questions, and people answer. If they do not answer, he finds ways to make them talk. He begins with the basics: your name, your family, your trade, your reasons for being in London. You answer honestly, because you have nothing to hide, or so you think. But the interrogator is not interested in facts. He is interested in patterns, in inconsistencies, in the way your eyes flicker when you mention a certain name, in the way your hands tremble when you recall a certain day. He asks about your friends, your neighbors, your loyalties. He asks about rumors you may have heard, about conversations you may have had, about things you may have seen or done. He asks about your politics, your religion, your feelings about the king and his ministers. He asks about things you have never thought about, things you did not know you knew. The questions come faster, sharper, like the blows of a hammer on an anvil. You try to keep up, but your mind is spinning, your mouth dry, your heart pounding. You realize, with a sickening certainty, that there are no right answers here. Every word is a trap, every silence a confession. The interrogator watches you with the patience of a spider. He makes notes in his ledger, occasionally glancing up to fix you with that unblinking stare. He does not threaten, does not cajole, does not raise his voice. He does not need to. The room itself is a threat, the guards a promise, the tower a sentence. At some point, he offers you a choice. Confess, and your suffering will end quickly. Deny, and it will continue until you break. He does not say what will happen if you tell the truth, because in the tower, truth is just another weapon. You try to remember what you have said, what you have not said, what you should say now. You try to remember who you are, who you were before the tower, before the interrogator, before the fear. You realize that you are losing yourself, piece by piece, with every question, every answer, every moment spent in this room. The interrogation lasts for hours, or maybe only minutes. Time has no meaning here. When it is over, the interrogator nods to the guards, and you are led from the room, your legs weak, your mind numb. You do not remember what you said. You do not know what will happen next. Back in your cell, you collapse onto the straw, your body shaking with exhaustion and terror. You replay the interrogation in your mind, searching for mistakes, for betrayals, for signs that you have doomed yourself or someone you care about. You find nothing but fear. The tower is silent. The ravens outside your window are quiet, their black eyes watching. The guards pass by without a word. The jailer brings your evening meal, but you cannot eat. You lie in the darkness, listening to the heartbeat of the tower, waiting for the next summons, the next question, the next test. You realize, with a clarity that is both terrifying and liberating, that you are no longer the person you were when you entered the tower. You are someone new, someone forged in fear and silence, someone tempered by interrogation and isolation, someone who has learned that survival is not about strength or cunning, but about endurance. You close your eyes and pray for morning, knowing that the interrogator will return, that the questions will continue, that the tower will not let you go until it has taken everything you have to give. And so you wait, and you endure, and you survive. Because in the Tower of London, that is all there is. If you want to understand the tower, you have to understand its people. Not the kings and queens who built it, not the warders in their starched uniforms, not even the executioner and his silent, shadowy presence. No, to truly know the tower, you must know its prisoners, the condemned, the forgotten, the unlucky souls who share your fate. You are one of them now, and their world is your world. The tower is a city within a city, its own society, its own rules. There are the old-timers, men and women whose faces are as familiar as the cracks in the stone. There are the newcomers, eyes wide and hearts pounding, still clinging to the hope that this is all a mistake. There are the broken, who speak only in whispers or not at all, and the defiant, who greet each day with curses and laughter, daring the tower to do its worst. Your first real encounter with your fellow condemned comes in the exercise yard. It's a muddy patch of ground hemmed in by high walls and watched over by guards who look as bored as they are dangerous. You're herded out with a handful of others, blinking in the gray daylight, grateful for the chance to stretch your legs and breathe air that doesn't taste of mildew and despair. There's the disgraced nobleman, Lord Harrow, who once dined with the king and now shuffles through the mud in shoes that were once velvet. He's thin as a reed, his face sharp and fox-like, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow. He talks in riddles, muttering about politics and betrayals, and you quickly learn that his words are both shield and sword. He survived here longer than most, and that alone makes him worth listening to. Then there's the foreign spy, a woman called Marguerite, that you suspect that isn't her real name. She keeps to herself, her accent slipping from French to Spanish to something you can't place. She has a scar on her cheek and a way of looking at you that makes you feel as she's reading your thoughts. The guards watch her closely, but she moves through the tower like a ghost, always one step ahead. You meet a petty thief named Tom, who claims to have escaped the tower twice already, but they keep dragging me back, don't they? He's missing 2 fingers and half his teeth, but he has a joke for every occasion and a story for every scar. He knows which guards can be bribed, which corners are safest to sleep in, and which rats are the friendliest. Tom is the unofficial guide to tower life, and for a crust of bread, he'll share his wisdom with anyone willing to listen. There are others, too. The washerwoman accused of witchcraft, who sings to herself in a language no one understands. The soldier who fell asleep on watch and dreams of fields of wheat and sunlit mornings. The merchant who lost everything in a fire and now spends his days counting imaginary coins. Each has a story, and most end badly. You learn quickly that alliances are everything. Food, information, even a scrap of cloth to bind a wound. Nothing is given freely, and everything has a price. You trade what you can, a memory of the outside world, a song learned in childhood, a promise to carry a message if you ever get out. In return, you gain small comforts, a corner of the cell that's less damp, A warning when the interrogators are making their rounds. A handful of dried peas smuggled from the kitchens. The condemned form their own hierarchies, their own codes of honor and revenge. There are debts to be paid, scores to be settled, friendships that are as fierce and fleeting as summer storms. You watch as two men argue over a scrap of meat, their voices rising until the guard intervenes with a blow from his club. Later, you see them sharing a laugh, the fight forgotten, or at least forgiven. In the tower, grudges are a luxury, and survival is a group effort. At night, the walls between cells become thin. You hear voices drifting through the darkness, prayers, curses, confessions. Sometimes, someone tells a story, and for a moment, the tower is filled with laughter or tears or the sound of a song that reminds you of home. You listen, and you remember that you are not alone. You learn to read the signs, the look in a guard's eye that means trouble, the way the rats scatter before a beating, the hush that falls when someone is taken for questioning and doesn't return. You learn to move quietly, to keep your head down, to offer help when it's safe, and to disappear when it's not. Sometimes, there are moments of unexpected kindness. A crust of bread shared without a word. A blanket passed through the bars on a freezing night. A whispered prayer for mercy, spoken not to the gods, but to each other. These moments are rare, but they are what keep you human. You begin to understand that the tower is not just a place of punishment. It is a crucible, a forge that burns away everything but the essential. Here, stripped of titles and wealth and pride, you see people as they truly are, afraid, angry, hopeful, desperate. You see yourself as you truly are, and the knowledge is both terrifying and liberating. One evening, as you sit in the exercise yard, Marguerite sits beside you. She does not speak for a long time, and when she finally does, her voice is soft. "Do you think anyone will remember us?" she asks. You want to say yes, of course, but the truth catches in your throat. You shrug, and she smiles, a small, sad smile that says she already knows the answer. "Then we must remember each other," she says. "That is all we can do." You nod, and for the first time since you entered the tower, you feel a flicker of something like hope. You are not free. You are not safe. But you are not alone. And in the Tower of London, sometimes, that is enough. In the tower, faith is as fragile as hope, and both are battered daily by the grind of stone and the weight of fear. Yet, in the heart of this fortress of dread, there is a place that offers a different kind of silence, a chapel, small and cold, but precious as a single candle in an endless night. You first hear of the chapel from Tom, the thief with the missing fingers and the talent for surviving. It's the only place the guards don't shout, he tells you, voice low as if the stones themselves might eavesdrop. You want a bit of peace, or a word of God, that's where you go. Just don't expect miracles. Not here. The day you are summoned to the chapel, you almost laugh. It feels like a trick, or a test. But the guard who comes for you is different, older, with a limp and a face that looks like it's been carved out of the tower itself. He doesn't bark or threaten. He just says, "Come on, then. You've got prayers to say." The walk is short, but every step is heavy with memory. The corridor is lined with ancient stones, each one worn smooth by centuries of feet, prisoners, priests, kings, and executioners alike. The door to the chapel is thick oak, banded with iron, but it opens without a sound. Inside, the air is cool and still, scented faintly with beeswax and old incense. The chapel is simple, almost austere. There are no golden icons, no jeweled chalices, no choir lofts or stained glass windows. Instead, there are rough wooden pews, a stone altar, and a single candle burning in a pool of melted wax. The light flickers, casting long shadows that dance across the walls. The only color comes from a faded tapestry, its threads worn thin, showing a saint whose name you've forgotten. You take a seat at the back, hands folded, head bowed. You are not alone. There are others. Lord Harrow, his noble bearing diminished but not destroyed. Marguerite, the spy, her eyes closed in a prayer you cannot hear. The washerwoman, singing softly in her strange tongue. Even Tom is there, sitting with his head in his hands, muttering something that might be a confession or a curse. A priest enters, his robe patched and faded, his hair gone to gray. He looks at you all with tired eyes, but there's kindness there, too, a gentleness that feels almost dangerous in a place like this. He begins the service, his voice low and steady, reciting prayers that have echoed within these walls for generations. You do not remember the words, but you remember the feeling. For a moment, the tower recedes. The fear, the hunger, the waiting, all of it fades beneath the weight of ancient ritual. You close your eyes and let the words wash over you, a tide that carries away your pain, if only for a moment. After the prayers, the priest invites you to come forward, one by one, to kneel at the altar. Some do not. When your turn comes, your knees creak as you kneel on the cold stone. The priest places a hand on your head, murmurs a blessing, and presses a small piece of bread into your palm. For strength, he says. For hope. You return to your seat, the bread warm in your hand. You do not eat it, not yet. You savor the feeling of it, the promise that even here, in the shadow of the scaffold, there is something worth holding on to. The service ends. The priest lingers, offering a word or a touch to those who need it most. Lord Harrow stays behind to confess, his voice trembling. Marguerite slips away without a sound. Tom grins at you, a flash of teeth in the dim light. See, he whispers. Not so bad. Even the tower can't keep God out. You file out of the chapel, back into the cold, echoing corridors. The moment of peace is gone, but it lingers in your heart like the afterglow of a dream. The guards are waiting, their faces blank, their eyes hard. The world of stone and steel closes around you once more, but you carry the memory of the chapel with you. In the days that follow, when the interrogator calls, when the jailer sneers, when the executioner sharpens his axe, you remember the candle's light, the priest blessing, the taste of bread. You remember that you are more than a prisoner, more than a name on a list, more than a body waiting for the block. You are a soul, battered but unbroken, and for as long as you remember that, the tower cannot truly claim you. And so, each night, as you lie on your pallet of straw, you whisper the prayers you learned in the chapel. You pray for freedom, for mercy, for the strength to endure. You pray for your fellow prisoners, for the priest, even for the guards. You pray for the tower itself, that it might one day be a place of peace, not pain. You do not know if anyone is listening, but you pray anyway, because in the Tower of London, sometimes, faith is the only freedom left. If the Tower of London is a living beast, its walls the bones, its gates the jaws, its dungeons the belly, then the yeoman warders, known to all as the beefeaters, are its beating heart and iron sinews. In the world outside, they are the stuff of postcards and parades, resplendent in their scarlet and gold, a symbol of royal tradition. But to you, and to every soul behind these walls, they are something else entirely. The keepers of order, the arbiters of fate, and sometimes the only barrier between you and oblivion. You learn to recognize them by their stride before you ever see their faces. Their boots strike the flagstones with a measured, almost musical rhythm, a sound that echoes down the corridors and through the marrow of every prisoner. It's a sound that means routine, authority, and, if you're lucky, predictability. But it can also mean sudden violence, or the start of a day that ends at the scaffold. The first beefeater you truly notice is Master Waterbreaks. He is a mountain of a man, with a beard that seems to have a mind of its own and a voice that can rattle the very stones. His uniform is immaculate, every button polished, every thread in place. He carries the great iron keys that open every door in the tower, and he wears them like a badge of office and a warning. When he walks the halls, even the rats seem to scurry out of his way. Briggs is not cruel, but neither is he kind. He is, above all, fair. He knows every face, every name, every secret passage and hidden nook. He knows which prisoners are likely to cause trouble, which ones are broken, and which ones still have a spark of hope. He dispenses discipline with the same hand that doles out the rare word of encouragement. Keep your head down, lad, he tells you one morning, his eyes crinkling just a little. The tower's got a long memory, but it's not always a good one. There are others, too. Warder Ellis, wiry and quick, who seems to have eyes in the back of his head and a wicked sense of humor. He smuggled in scraps of gossip and, on rare occasions, a bit of bread or cheese for the prisoners he deems worthy. Warder Smythe, silent and stern, who never raises his voice but whose glare is enough to freeze even the most hardened criminal in his tracks. And Warder Holt, the youngest, whose hands still shake when he locks the doors at night, as if he can't quite believe he's part of this ancient machinery. The beefeaters are not alone in their duties. There are the common guards, less disciplined, more prone to cruelty or bribery. Some are former soldiers, nursing old wounds and older grudges. Others are locals, drawn by the promise of steady pay and a roof over their heads. They are the ones who shout and shove, who turn a blind eye to the petty squabbles and the quiet acts of kindness that pass between prisoners. They are the ones you learn to avoid, if you can. But it is the yeoman warders who set the tone, who enforce the rules, who keep the tower running as it has for centuries. They are the keepers of tradition, the guardians of secrets, the living memory of all who have come and gone. They know the stories of Anne Boleyn's last walk, of Guy Fawkes' broken body, of the princes who vanished without a trace. They tell these stories to each other, and sometimes to you, in the quiet hours when the world outside seems impossibly far away. You watch them as they go about their routines, unlocking doors, checking cells, escorting prisoners to the chapel, or the yard, or the interrogator's chamber. You see the way they stand at attention during the changing of the guard, the way they salute the flag each morning, the way they lower their voices when passing the bloody tower. You see the pride in their bearing, but also the weariness in their eyes. The tower is as much a prison for them as it is for you, though their chains are made of duty and tradition rather than iron. Sometimes, late at night, you hear them talking in the corridor outside your cell. Their voices are low, almost conspiratorial. They talk of home, of wives and children, of the price of bread and the latest news from court. They talk of prisoners past and present, of escapes and executions, of the strange things that happen when the moon is full and the ravens are restless. You listen, and you realize that they are not so different from you. Men bound by circumstance, doing what they must to survive. There are moments of unexpected humanity. One winter's night, when the wind howls and the cold seeps through every crack in the stone, Warder Ellis slips you an extra blanket with a wink. "Don't say I never did you a favor," he mutters, and you clutch the scratchy wool to your chest as if it were spun from gold. Another time, when a fight breaks out in the yard, Master Brake steps in, not with his club, but with a story about a prisoner who tried to escape by dressing as a raven. The absurdity of it breaks the tension, and for a moment, even the guards are laughing. But there is always the other side. The punishments, swift and brutal, for those who step out of line. The public floggings, the solitary confinement, the endless hours spent in darkness and silence. The guards enforce the rules with a precision born of necessity. They cannot afford to show weakness, for the tower is a place where weakness is quickly exploited. You learn to read their moods, to anticipate their movements, to stay out of their way when tempers are short or when the executioner is sharpening his axe. You learn that a kind word can buy you a moment's peace, but that trust is a dangerous luxury. The guards are not your friends, but neither are they your enemies. They are simply part of the tower, as inescapable as the walls themselves. In time, you come to understand that the beefeaters are the true historians of the tower. They remember every face, every story, every secret whispered in the dark. They are the keepers of the past, the watchers of the present, the guardians of a future that is forever uncertain. And as you lie in your cell at night, listening to the rhythm of their boots on the stone, you find a strange comfort in their presence. For as long as the guards walk the halls, as long as the keys turn in the locks, as long as the tower endures, you are not forgotten. You are part of a story that began long before you arrived, and will continue long after you are gone. The tower guards are your jailers, your judges, your witnesses. They are the living memory of all that has been lost and all that remains. And in their watchful eyes, you catch a glimpse of your own humanity, battered, but not yet broken. There are two kinds of prisoners in the Tower of London, those who dream of escape, and those who know better. You'd like to think you're the latter, practical and resigned, but the truth is, every night you lie on your pallet, you imagine what it would take to slip past the guards, scale the walls, and vanish into the London fog. It's a fantasy, of course, one you share with every soul who's ever stared at these stones and wondered if freedom might be just a clever plan away. But one day, the fantasy becomes real. It starts as a whisper. Tom the thief, always a little too bold for his own good, claims he's found a way out. He's got a file, smuggled in by a sympathetic washerwoman, and a plan that's half desperation, half genius. The word spreads like wildfire through the cells. For days, the atmosphere is electric, every glance loaded with meaning, every conversation laced with hope and terror. You're not part of the plan. Tom is careful, choosing only those he trusts, and you're too new, too quiet, too obviously watched by the guards. But you hear enough to know the details. The file will be used to saw through the bars of Tom's window, which faces a narrow alley between two towers. At midnight, when the guards are changing shifts and the tower is at its sleepiest, Tom and his chosen accomplice, a wiry ex-soldier named Jack, will slip out, scale the outer wall with a rope made of stolen bedsheets, and drop into the moat below. From there, they'll swim to the far bank, where a friend waits with a cart and a change of clothes. It sounds impossible. The moat is filthy and cold, the walls are slick with moss, and the guards are not as sleepy as Tom hopes. But hope is a dangerous thing in the tower, and for a few days, it burns brighter than fear. You watch as Tom prepares. He files the bars night after night, working in the darkness, muffling the sound with rags and prayers. Jack sharpens a stolen spoon into a makeshift dagger, just in case. The rest of you wait, holding your breath, wondering if you'll wait to find their cell empty and the guards in chaos. The night of the escape is colder than usual. The wind howls around the towers, rattling the shutters and sending the ravens into a frenzy. You lie awake, listening to the distant scrape of metal on metal, the soft thud of feet on stone. Time stretches and snaps, each minute an eternity. Then, suddenly, everything happens at once. There's a shout, a guard, perhaps, or one of the prisoners unable to keep silent. The corridor erupts in chaos. You hear running feet, the clang of weapons, the barked orders of the beefeaters. Someone screams. The smell of fear is thick in the air. You press your face to the bars, straining to see. In the flickering torchlight, you catch a glimpse of Tom and Jack, their faces pale and desperate, scrambling through the window and onto the narrow ledge. For a moment, it looks like they might make it. Tom tosses the rope down, Jack begins to climb, and then disaster. A guard spots them. There's a shout, a flash of steel. Jack loses his grip and tumbles, landing hard on the stones below. Tom freezes, caught between flight and surrender. The guards swarm, dragging them back and side, bloodied and beaten. The rest of you are herded into the yard, lined up against the wall as the beefeaters search every cell, every corner, every shadow. The mood is tense, electric, the air crackling with anger and fear. Master Warder breaks paces in front of you, his face thunderous. You think you can outsmart the tower? He bellows. You think you're the first? Let this be a lesson to all of you. The punishment is swift and brutal. Jack, his arm broken, is dragged to the stocks and flogged in front of everyone. Tom is made to watch, his face twisted in agony, not from the pain, but from the knowledge that he has failed. The rest of you are sent back to your cells, the doors slamming shut with a finality that leaves no room for hope. That night, the tower is quieter than you've ever known it. The usual whispers and songs are gone, replaced by a heavy silence. Even the ravens seem subdued, their cries muffled by the fog. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the escape in your mind. You wonder if you would have been braver than Tom, smarter than Jack, luckier than either. You wonder if you'll ever have a chance to find out. In the days that follow, the tower tightens its grip. The guards are harsher, the punishments more severe. The hope that flared so briefly is snuffed out, replaced by a grim resignation. But beneath the surface, something has changed. The dream of escape is no longer just a fantasy. It is a memory, a possibility, a spark that refuses to die. You carry that spark with you, hidden deep inside, waiting for the day when the tower's grip slips, when the guards grow careless, when hope is stronger than fear. Until then, you survive. You endure. You remember. Because in the Tower of London, even the smallest act of rebellion is a victory. There are days in the tower when the air feels thick with expectation, as if the very stones are waiting for something to happen. Rumors swirl like the fog on the Thames. Someone's been pardoned, someone's been condemned, someone's been forgotten. But you, like every other prisoner, know that the only news that truly matters is the one that comes from the king himself. The royal decree. It is a morning like any other, gray and damp, with the ravens arguing on the battlements and the guards shuffling through their routines. You wake to the sound of a key in your lock, but this time it's not the usual jailer. Its master warder breaks himself, his beard bristling and his eyes unreadable. He doesn't bark an order or trade a joke. He simply says, "Come with me." The weight in his voice tells you everything. You're led through the tower's winding corridors, past cells where faces press against the bars, each one hungry for a glimpse of what's happening. Past the chapel, where the priest offers a hurried blessing. Past the yard, where the other prisoners are gathered, their eyes following you with a mixture of pity and relief that it's not their turn. The destination is a chamber you've only heard about in whispers, the King's Hall. It is grand in its own way, with high ceilings, banners faded by candle smoke, and the ever-present chill of stone. At the far end sits the constable of the tower, flanked by clerks and guards, a parchment unrolled before him. You stand alone in the center, the focus of every gaze. The constable reads aloud, his voice echoing off the walls. The words are formal, heavy with ceremony. By order of His Majesty the King, it is decreed that the prisoner, and then your name, spoken with the finality of a bell tolling. The charges are recited, each one a stone added to the pile on your chest. There is no room for argument, no chance to plead your case. The king's word is law, and the law is absolute. You try to read the faces in the room. The clerks are impassive, their quills poised. The guards are stone-faced, their hands resting on sword hilts. The constable's eyes flicker with something, regret, pity, or just the exhaustion of a man who has seen too many lives decided by the stroke of a pen. When the decree is finished, the constable looks up. "Do you have anything to say?" he asks, and for a moment, the room holds its breath. You think of all the things you might say, that you are innocent, that you were betrayed, that you only wanted to survive. You think of your family, your friends, the life you left behind. You think of the tower and how it has changed you, hardened you, broken you, remade you. In the end, you simply shake your head. There is nothing left to say. The constable nods, as if he expected nothing else. He signs the parchment with a flourish, and the deed is done. The guards step forward, their grip gentle but firm. You are led from the hall, past the watching eyes, back through the corridors that have become so familiar. The other prisoners look away, some in fear, some in sympathy, some in envy that your waiting is over. Back in your cell, the world feels smaller than ever. The decree hangs over you like a storm cloud, its words echoing in your mind. You know what comes next. The final meal, the priest's blessing, the walk to the scaffold. The waiting is almost over, and for the first time, you are not sure if that is a mercy or a curse. As night falls, you lie awake, listening to the tower breathe around you. You think of the ravens, the guards, the other prisoners. You think of the king, far away in his palace, unaware of the lives his signature has changed forever. You think of the tower itself, ancient and implacable, a witness to countless decrees and countless endings. And you wonder, as you drift into uneasy sleep, what the world will remember of you when the tower has had its say. There's a strange hush in the tower when your fate is sealed. It's the kind of quiet that settles before a thunderstorm, thick and heavy, as if the air itself is bracing for what comes next. The guards walk softer, the ravens seem to caw a little less, and even the stones feel colder beneath your feet. You know what's coming. Everyone does. The royal decree has been read, the last hope has slipped away, and now you're left with the final rituals of a condemned soul. You wake to the sound of footsteps, measured, deliberate, not the hurried shuffle of a jailer with rounds to make, but the steady tread of someone with a purpose. Master Warder Briggs appears at your cell, flanked by 2 guards. He doesn't need to say a word. You rise, because what else is there to do? He nods, and you follow, your heart an anchor in your chest. They lead you, not to the yard or the chapel, but to a small chamber you've never seen before. There's a table set for one, a battered wooden chair, and miracle of miracles, a plate of food that doesn't look like it was scraped from the bottom of the cauldron. The meal is simple, but compared to what you've endured, it's a feast, a slab of roasted meat, a heel of fresh bread, a wedge of cheese, even a cup of wine. You stare at it, half expecting it to vanish like a mirage. Briggs clears his throat. It's tradition, he says, softer than you've ever heard him. A last meal. Eat what you can. He leaves you alone, the door closing with a gentleness that feels almost like mercy. You sit. For a long time, you just look at the food. You think of all the meals you've missed, all the hunger you swallowed, all the times you dreamed of something warm and filling. You remember the kitchens at home, the laughter around your family's table, the smell of bread baking in the hearth. You remember the taste of freedom. You take a bite of bread. It's soft, yeasty, with a crust that cracks just right. You chew slowly, savoring every crumb. The meat is salty, rich, and you let the fat melt on your tongue. The cheese is sharp, the wine tart and warming. You eat because you must, but also because you want to remember what it feels like to be alive, to want something, to take pleasure in a simple thing. As you eat, memories flood you, feasts and fasts, celebrations and sorrows. You remember the faces of those you love, the sound of their voices, the warmth of their hands. You remember laughter, arguments, secrets whispered in the dark. You remember who you were before the tower, before the waiting, before the decree. You finish the meal, wiping the plate clean with the last bit of bread. There is no ceremony, no applause, just the quiet satisfaction of a hunger sated, if only for a moment. You set the cup down and close your eyes, breathing in the scents, committing them to memory. When the guards return, they find you standing, your back straight, your eyes clear. Briggs looks at you for a long moment, then nods. It's time, he says, and you know he means it kindly. You walk back to your cell, the taste of bread and wine lingering on your tongue. The other prisoners watch you pass, their faces a mix of pity, envy, and respect. Some whisper prayers, some avert their eyes, some offer a nod or a smile. You are one of them, and soon you will be gone. Back in your cell, you sit on your pallet and wait. The sun slants through the high window, painting golden bars on the wall. You listen to the sounds of the tower, the distant clang of a gate, the caw of a raven, the muffled sob of a prisoner who knows what's coming next. You are calm, or as calm as anyone can be. The priest comes, offering words of comfort, a blessing, a promise of peace beyond these walls. You take his hand, grateful for the kindness, even if you're not sure you believe in the paradise he describes. You believe in bread and wine, and memory and hope, in the strength it takes to face the end with her head held high. As night falls, you close your eyes and let yourself drift. You dream of home, of laughter, of freedom. You dream of a world where the tower is just a story, and you are more than a name on a list. You dream, because it is the last thing that is truly yours. And when the dawn comes, you will rise and walk out of your cell for the final time, the taste of your last meal still sweet on your lips, ready to meet whatever comes with the dignity of one who has endured and survived and remembered what it means to be alive. There is a peculiar clarity that comes with the morning of your execution. The world sharpens at the edges, every sound and sensation suddenly vivid, as if the tower itself wants you to remember every detail of your final hours. The dawn is pale and cold, a thin mist curling along the stones. You wait before the guards arrive, heart pounding with a strange, almost peaceful resignation. Today, there is nothing left to wait for. The ritual begins as it always does, but today, every gesture feels ceremonial. The guards come for you, Master Warder Briggs and 2 others, their faces set, their uniforms immaculate. Briggs's eyes meet yours, and for the first time, you see not just the authority of the tower, but the weight of all the souls he's escorted to the scaffold. He doesn't speak. He simply unlocks the door and steps aside, granting you the dignity of walking out under your own power. The corridor is silent, save for the echo of your footsteps. Other prisoners press against the bars, some whispering prayers, others averting their eyes. You catch a glimpse of Tom, the thief, his face pale and drawn. Marguerite, the spy, nods at you, her gaze fierce and proud. Even Lord Harrow, the broken nobleman, manages a thin smile. In this moment, you are not just another condemned soul. You are the sum of all their hopes and fears, the living proof that the tower's shadow touches everyone. You are led to the chapel for one last blessing. The priest's hands tremble as he anoints your forehead, his words a blur of comfort and sorrow. Go with God, he whispers. You have endured. You nod, unable to speak, the lump in your throat too large to swallow. The walk to the scaffold is not long, but it feels endless. The tower's courtyard is already filled with people, guards, officials, a scattering of townsfolk who have come to witness the spectacle. The ravens are there too, perched on the walls, their black eyes gleaming with anticipation. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and old blood. You step out into the open, the cold biting through your thin shirt. The crowd parts as you pass, some making the sign of the cross, others staring with morbid curiosity. You hear snippets of conversation, poor soul. What did they do? Will the axe fall clean? But you focus on the path ahead. At the foot of the scaffold, the executioner waits. He is as you remember him, tall, hooded, his axe gleaming in the morning light. He nods once, a gesture of respect, and helps you up the steps. Though it creaks beneath your feet, the world narrowing to the platform, the block, the blade. You kneel, as tradition demands. The executioner asks if you have any last words. You think of all the things you might say, pleas for mercy, declarations of innocence, messages for those you love, but in the end, you simply look up at the sky, the ravens, the ancient stones, and whisper, "Remember me." The crowd falls silent. The priest murmurs a final prayer. The executioner raises his axe, and for a heartbeat, Tom stands still. You close your eyes. The blade falls. For a moment, there is only darkness. Then, strangely, a sense of release, a lightness, as if the weight of the tower has finally lifted. You are free, at last, from stone and shadow, from waiting and fear. But your story does not end here. The tower will remember. The ravens will carry your name in their cries. The prisoners will whisper your tale in the darkness. And somewhere, beyond these walls, someone will mourn, and someone will hope, and someone will dream of freedom. In the Tower of London, every ending is also a beginning. The stones endure. The stories live on. You kneel at the block, heart pounding so hard you're sure the whole tower can hear it. The wood beneath your knees is cold and worn smooth by the weight of countless souls who came before you. The air is sharp with the scent of wet stone, sweat, and the faint, metallic tang of old blood. Somewhere, a raven caws, a harsh, echoing cry that rings through the courtyard like a warning. The crowd is silent, a sea of faces blurred by your fear and the morning mist. You sense the eyes of the guards, the flicker of the priest's candle, the presence of your fellow prisoners pressed against the windows, holding their breath. The executioner stands beside you, a mountain of a man in a black hood, his hands steady as he lifts the axe. The blade glints in the pale light, clean and merciless. You wonder, in that suspended moment, if your story will be remembered. Will anyone speak your name a year from now? Will the tower's stones hold the memory of your courage, your regrets, your final words? Or will you vanish, as so many have, into the silence that follows the fall of the blade? The priest murmurs a prayer, his voice trembling. You close your eyes and think of home, of laughter around a hearth, of the taste of fresh bread, of the faces of those you love. You remember the feel of sunlight on your skin, the sound of your mother's voice, the rough comfort of your father's hand on your shoulder. You remember who you were before the tower, before the waiting, before the fear. The executioner's hand rests on your shoulder, heavy and oddly gentle. Be brave, he whispers, so quietly that only you can hear. You draw a breath, steady and deep, and rest your chin on the block. Time slows. The world narrows to the grain of the wood beneath your cheek, the chill of the morning air, the distant toll of a church bell. You hear the executioner shift his stance, the crowd's collective intake of breath, the flutter of a raven's wings. You speak your last words, not to the crowd, not to the king, but to the world itself. Remember me. The axe rises. For a heartbeat, you feel a strange peace, a release from fear, from pain, from the endless waiting. The blade flashes down, swift and sure. There is no pain, only a rush of light, a sense of flight, and then nothing. But the tower remembers. The ravens remember. The prisoners whisper your name in the dark, passing your story from cell to cell, from one generation to the next. The stones hold your memory, etched deep by the weight of all who have knelt at this block before you. And so, in the Tower of London, you are not forgotten. Your story endures in the silence after the axe falls, in the prayers of the condemned, in the shadows that linger long after the crowd has gone. You are gone, but you are remembered. The axe falls, and the world holds its breath. For a moment, the Tower of London is utterly still. The crowd does not move. The ravens do not call. Even the guards seem frozen in place. Then, as if released from a spell, life resumes. The executioner wipes his blade, the priest murmurs a final prayer, and the warders begin the solemn work of clearing the scaffold. Your body is carried away, but your presence lingers like a shadow in the cold morning air. The onlookers disperse, some crossing themselves, others whispering about your courage or your crimes. The prisoners who watched from their barred windows retreat into the gloom, each left alone with their thoughts, some fearful, some inspired, all changed by what they have witnessed. In the chapel, the priest lights a candle for your soul. He speaks your name softly, adding it to the long, unbroken chain of prayers for the condemned. The flame flickers, casting strange shadows on the ancient stones, and for a moment it seems as if the tower itself is mourning. The guards go about their duties, but even they are quieter than usual. Master Warder Briggs lingers in the yard, staring at the block. He remembers every face, every story, and yours will join the ones he carries in the silent hours of the night. He is not a sentimental man, but he knows the weight of history, and he knows the tower never truly forgets. The other prisoners mark your passing in their own ways. Tom, the thief, carves a small notch in the wall beside his bunk, a tally for the fallen. Marguerite, the spy, whispers your name in a language no one else understands. Lord Harrow, the broken nobleman, raises his eyes to the window and recites a line from a poem he once loved. Even the guards, hardened by years of duty, pause at your empty cell, if only for a heartbeat. The tower itself seems to sigh. The ravens gather on the battlements, their black wings restless against the sky. They are the keepers of secrets, the silent witnesses to every ending and every beginning. As dusk falls, they take flight, circling above the tower before vanishing into the gathering dark. Outside, the city moves on. The Thames flows past, indifferent as ever. The market bustles, the bells ring, and somewhere, a mother calls her child home for supper. But within the tower, your story echoes. It is told in whispers, in prayers, in the silent glances of those who remain. And so, though your life has ended, your memory endures in the stones, in the stories, in the hearts of those who watched you meet your fate with courage. The tower remembers, as it always has, and as it always will.